Yeah, I got it. I'm just going to put it electronically. One 21:25, EDA is now in session. It is a Tuesday morning and it is miserably cold out, so let's see what we got for today's agenda. Call to order, approval of agenda. Has anybody got anything they want on or off this? Motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I didn't hear who was the first and second.
I was first. Second was
Doesn't matter
one of
what
the
year,
two.
it's one of the-
Sean
It was Juan.
Juan.
Give it to Juan.
Whichever.
One, John. All right. Motion passes. Open forum. Is there anybody on our computer today? I heard something chime in. Nothing? Okay. We'll close that up. Old business discussion, damage, Inoperable. You're not,
Consent agenda?
did we do that?
No.
Oh, I'm
So the
sorry.
minutes we missed.
We did minutes. Do we have anything on our consent agenda? Approval of minutes. We need a motion to approve?
Motion to approve. Second.
You ready? I don't want to run too fast for you.
No, thank you.
Okay, no open forum. Are we ready for old business, John?
Yeah, was there a vote?
Yes. Oh, I'm.
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
You're frozen this morning.
So it's got to be. I'm kidding. My hands are shaking. Okay, so yes, we passed that. Old business now. Go ahead, John.
Thank you. Old business, so as was, the discussion started in November in regards to inoperable or damaged utility boxes. These are required to be repaired. There's kind of a process to go through for us to do code enforcement. At the December meeting, the EDA had asked what the progress was, and I mentioned that there really hadn't been any. There still hasn't any. So we don't have the staff time to do proactive code enforcement. If this is something that the EDA or the council would like to do, it's likely would have to wait until, I'm going to say mid-year when we hire full-time firefighters that will have some daytime capacity to do code enforcement. So
That would be normal for the firefighters to do this type of stuff?
in cities, so it's normal for, I'm going to say some firefighters to do certain types of code enforcement as well as housing inspections or for like rental properties. We have a community service officer, they do some code enforcement. We have planning staff that does some code enforcement, so it all kind of varies. But the way that we would do this essentially is by driving up and down every street in Dayton and logging what address boxes are at, and then notifying those utility companies to fix them. So, I mean, there's a lot of time involved with it.
Why couldn't, I mean, I don't know, maybe this sounds too simple, but why not just send a letter to the utility
That's what I
saying,
was thinking.
instead of going through driving the whole city to look
Yeah.
for boxes, we already know where there's a couple.
If
Yeah,
we're
why are we
going to
paying
do-
for that? Let them pay for it and go around and check their inventory.
If we're doing enforcement, we have to prove that there's a violation.
Yeah, they
Well,
won't do it.
that's one. There could be a.
There's 6 on
$100
there.
Or what?
There's 6 on there. It's all up and down Balsam. You can look at that real
Okay,
easy.
there could be 1,000 though.
Right, but why not worry about the 6?
Yeah.
I'll write the letter if you want me to.
We can do enforcement on Balsam. I'm just saying that's not the only place where we have broken utility boxes.
Would there be, like, maybe we could put it in the communicator as an example. If you see a utility box that needs repair, here's a number to call, and then we send a letter basically to that utility. I mean, I would agree it seems very bureaucratic to have firefighters driving around the city looking for utility boxes. I think we can,
I think we can do better than that.
I think we can get our citizens to identify, and then we can just have probably just have a standard letter that we've developed and send out every time, just change the name of the utility, whoever it is. I mean, there can't be that many utilities, can there? Maybe 6 or 10?
No, but I'm just saying that there's a process, for us to do enforcement on it, there's a process that we need to follow. So, I mean,
So you're saying that the fire department and/or whoever in a city capacity has to actually inspect it before a letter can be sent? Is that what we're saying?
to do enforcement on it. I mean, we can send out put a notice in the communicator saying, if here's a
Identify.
listing of utility providers, if you have a broken box in your yard or your neighborhood.
Oh, you can call
you
yourself?
You can call yourself.
Oh, well, that's a good solution. Because, I mean, neighbors will probably do that. I mean, if they're concerned about it,
It
they're,
is. So, I mean, the issue is, in case where, like, you have this one where no one, the property owner, I'm sure, doesn't care about it.
yeah,
Otherwise
that's
they
out in
would
front of
call.
PD, the gas station here,
This
isn't
is
it?
Sarah's property.
Yeah.
Or it's not that he doesn't care, it's just he doesn't know what to do. It's not his property.
I reached out to Public Works Director, and I says, hey, do you know these exist? He goes, yes, we've been trying to handle that for years, but we've got no teeth in it. If the Public Works Director can't do this, and he says, by all means, reach out to whomever and make this happen, you've reached out to him yourself, have you not?
Not to the utility companies. So I've handed this over to the Public Works.
You went to Public Works?
Yeah.
Oh, because I think we had a question last time that if you reached out to these utilities and you had said yes on that.
No, I've given it over to Public Works, and they've not had the time to do this.
So we got codes with no enforcement.
Correct.
Sounds like the simplest thing to do is get a hold of the utility company. Hey, John, how about if you fix this?
Send them a letter.
At least we start doing something instead of.
We can do that, but if I'm the utility company, I'm going to say I've got 1,000 utility boxes. Which one is it?
I don't
Yes.
care. Then you say, Tim, I don't care.
Yes, you go find 'em.
Excuses is
Well-
an excuse. Let's get them fixed.
Well, if they don't listen, I think we should turn the volume up, and that's why. She said-
When you think about it from a city perspective, what is the teeth in enforcement? Like, if you say you need to fix this, and they
ultimately-
say, no, I'm not going to, what can we ultimately do?
So the city code allows us to take possession of the utility.
Take the-
Utility or the utility box?
Well, utility box.
Okay. Because I just did this. We have a private road up north where my lake home is. And we fixed the corner, and there's a utility box right on the easement. And we asked them, please move it. And they said, well, it's not high on our agenda. Okay. Oh, if a snowplow hits it, that's fine.
I'm really looking at this as a point of view, if we were going to invite very good businesses into our city to do business here, to conduct, the least we can do is fix some boxes and say, oh, well, never mind, you really don't need a phone anyway. Or electrical. Look at that pole on the right-hand side there. That's about 5 feet off the ground. I'm assuming that's high tension. High enough to kill somebody. And that's been that way for years.
That's a cable box.
Was that?
That's a cable box.
That whole thing is ours?
Yeah.
Tim's pointing to there's a utility pole on the side of the road.
Sure.
It's hard to see it in the photo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't disagree with any of it. I think, I can see where the utilities will just continue to ignore us if we're not very specific about what we want. And the who does it, firefighters doesn't necessarily sound right to me either. I mean, our expectation out of that big new expense is that we get better service from the fire department on emergency calls during the daytime.
I can understand they're looking for something for them to do, but.
Well, if that's the case, we can work
I
on
can
that
always-
too, and I'm not saying they shouldn't do it either. Somebody has to do it. I guess it gets down to that. It seems more like a public works thing to me, and, do they do they do any kind of a checklist in the spring? I mean, we know they drive all the roads, they plow them, right? And plow it when they're plowing snow, that probably isn't the time to be looking for.
Stop and
Then you might not see them anyway if we had any snow. I guess everything's visible right now. So the who is a harder question for me to answer, but I think that, an inventory of these things, and maybe, you block out the city and look at it over time. And, I mean, Tim's Street has got a bunch of them, that's a place to start, but, get 15 or 20 of them and send them a letter with those specifics on them, and then tell them more to come. We're going through the whole city.
yeah, that would be the process that we would do.
I still think we should put some message in the communicator for people to identify them.
I think that's a great idea, too.
And I
yeah.
think that, once identified, so you got 5 of them or 10 of them, whatever, then you can send someone specifically from Public Works, here's 10, here are the addresses, go look at them, it's going to take you an hour. I mean, I can't believe that the Public Works guys don't have an hour to go identify them or do whatever is verify them required by the city. We send a letter. I guess the big thing I feel is like there's no real teeth. I mean, what does the city going to do by taking them over? I mean, we can send a nasty letter to the utility kind of thing saying, hey, you need to fix this. I think that's about as much as we can do probably, because the city, what would the city do if they took them over? You're not going to fix it.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, you're not got an electrician that's going
Put a
to.
utility belt on, start pulling cable. I don't think that's going to happen.
They must be doing something, there's no plowing.
Yeah. No, let's not go there.
Can the city, and I'm almost looking at the attorney a little bit, but can the city threaten to not allow the utility to do business in their city if
Operate.
they
Contractual
are
question.
not fixing things? I mean, I don't know,
Well, can
it's
you
a
suspend
stretch,
it?
but
Can you
I'm just
suspend
like,
business?
where's the teeth? You gotta have teeth or people aren't gonna do it.
There's a contract
anything.
somewhere years ago, but they won't service copper anymore. They already told me that. They said, we ain't fixing copper. I said, well, then get it out of here. Well, they have no problem putting fiber in, which I really wanted for a lot of years, but at $600 a month. So why would you put copper? Or coax?
Is there any teeth, or do we really not know?
Or we just let them sit there.
So, looking at your code would need to be changed, and that's where I'm not, John, maybe you can give me a little bit of clarification. Does the city use administrative citations or anything like that?
we would. We've not in the past.
So, looking at your code, you have the ability to what's called abate the nuisance. Well, the nuisance is obvious, right? It's the danger of this stuff sitting there, kids can get into it, play in it, who knows if it's charged, I'm assuming it's not, but whatever, it's still not safe as it currently sits. So this would be considered a public nuisance. I understand that the city has complaint-based code enforcement, meaning we get a complaint and then we go out and fix it, versus proactive code enforcement, which is where we just literally scan areas of the city for violations. There are some legal reasons why a city would want to do complaint-based code enforcement, because the problem with the scanning concept is it's possible that you can have people claiming that they're being targeted, right? That doesn't really apply when we're talking about utilities and the right-of-way, but that might apply when we're talking about yard maintenance type stuff. So I understand why the city's doing that. My concern is that in your code right now, in this 152.62, you don't really have clear penalties for violations. So you say you can abate a nuisance, but you don't say who's going to pay, right? And so it should be the utility that's paying for that abatement, but that isn't specified in this code section. Perhaps it's someplace else in the code. I'm not an expert on your city code. But it looks to me like probably what you would want to do is incorporate some additional code language. Going to your original question, that code language could include things like, if you do not have your existing boxes cleaned up, we reserve the right not to approve your right-of-way permit to put in new stuff.
I mean, that to me seems like the
Right.
most teeth you could, because then they're gonna do something. Because they're, I can't do business in your city unless I fix this.
You'll have their attention.
Yeah, they'll do it. And so, I think we should recommend to city council to look at and change the ordinance with that specific language, and then see if the city council will take that up. Well, we got two city council guys right here. What do you think?
Scott, John, what do you think?
I think that's a great idea.
Okay, let's have a motion to forward this up, that city council takes a poke at that ordinance.
I'll make a motion, and then I guess the specific language I would ask that our attorney provide.
Yeah, I had a question. So, as an attorney for other cities, is that normally how they handle that?
So, the utilities are tricky because generally this code section hasn't been touched in 30 years, and it's sort of this thing where there's not a lot of great penalties. I have a few cities that take escrow, so they take money from the utility when they put stuff in, and then they can use that to do various maintenance or whatever things that they need. I have another city that's struggling, just like Dayton, not really sure what to do. They have a lot of stuff that looks like this, and they're not quite sure where to go with how to get the utilities to comply. Utility companies are difficult. Maybe too much information, but general code enforcement, the way that it would work is you're the property owner, right? And you've a bunch of weeds in your yard, right? Your grass is 16 inches tall and it looks terrible. So that's easy for the city to go in and do something. We can go in and we can abate the nuisance, in that case, the very tall grass. Somebody goes in, they mow it. Because you're the property owner, we send you the cost of abatement. So whatever it was for that person to mow it, we send you that bill. If you don't pay that bill, we can assess that to your property taxes. So we're getting paid at the end of the day no matter what. It might take 18 months, but eventually that money is coming into the city. When we're talking about the utility companies, they aren't the property owner, right? They just have an easement. And so it makes it harder to be able to have the final win, essentially.
Who
that
owns
makes
the
sense.
box?
I'm sorry?
Who owns the box?
The utility company.
Okay.
I like your first idea.
So
You
do
can't
I.
do business here if you don't fix your boxes.
That's right. That's common sense. And last, look at all the developments that are going in.
Yeah, but they're on all fiber now.
They still have
Well,
stuff is all-
I understand, but whose box is that? And
Telco.
it's Telco? And they're not going into the new,
They will not service copper anymore. I had 2 telcos, I have 49 telcos running into my shop. None of them are peri-usable for a phone system, so I had to switch to a cable-based modem. Then I update my bandwidth, and they won't service any more than 1 gig, which is fractional. So then they said, well, we'll do it on fiber. Sure, ring that till. I don't want this to be too trivial for this group, but I think this stuff's got to get handled, and no one's handling it.
Well, it's only getting worse over
Yeah.
the years.
right, because if they're not servicing copper, then why service anything else?
To his point,
You know?
absolutely, you can't do business. It makes sense.
Yeah, I think the only thing that we really have an issue with is companies that have ceased to do business in the city, which may be like a a landline phone company may have ceased to do business, and in that case, that's probably not active. It just needs to be cut off. And,
CenturyLink.
but I mean, if there are a few customers on their active line, and we cut it off, that would piss them off. But I think we just have to deal. I think if we go the route we talked about, then that gets 90% of it, and the ones that aren't doing business anymore, we'll have to come up with another plan to remove them or something.
Yeah, seems like there must be language somewhere that we can use about
Yeah.
abandoned utilities. And
Yeah.
if that's dead, then somebody has the responsibility to get it
Get
out.
it out of there.
Well, maybe we put the language in there on abandoned too, just add that into the code. And so then we have a way, or the council has a way to address either situation.
First of all, you two, is this a council thing or is this a development thing?
It's a council.
Changing the ordinance would be the council.
You gotta have the ordinance
Yeah, the
changed.
ordinance first. I mean, currently we have an ordinance, but we're not doing anything about it, so I mean,
Well, there's
that's the
nothing,
first thing is to do something about it.
Sure.
yeah, there's nothing in the ordinance, basically, is what's being said.
Did you need a first and a second on this?
I've got a first, I don't have a second.
I need a second on this last one, second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any more discussion on that? We're good.
So the direction, once again, is to prepare an ordinance amendment that addresses damaged and abandoned utility boxes.
Correct.
Abandon anything utilities.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you said it right.
Yeah.
And then get the language from our attorney. And
Yep.
Yeah.
propose that to the council.
How was that one, huh? Moving on. Old business discussion, EDA mailer. Who wants to run with that one?
That is me. Okay, so also the November EDA meeting, there's a discussion of trying to publicize the revolving loan fund. There's an article that's going out in the Dayton Communicator that was included in the packet. Also, what was directed is to prepare a mailer. So I talked to Osseo Minuteman Press, who does our communicators. They've given me a quote of about $1,800 to do, I think it's 5.5 by 8.5. So my question for the EDA is this what you want to do?
We had a budget.
Does that include mailing?
Yeah. Yes.
Postage, it includes postage.
Okay.
I think they call it EDDM.
Yeah. Oh, it's ESAR, yeah.
Postage size, kind of like somebody running for office size.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Of course, we talked about last time, and assuming you're saying this page is in the communicator, and then essentially they're gonna take this page and make it a mailer.
No, this is the mailer.
Okay. So it's just that one side, it's just the front of the page?
Yeah, there's a front and the back. The
Yeah.
front is mostly white space, but it's included in the packet.
Okay.
Is it included as a attached page?
Oh, it is in the packet. Where?
So when we get the date communicator, will this be an attached page to it, stapled to it, or is it not?
Whole separate mailer.
So
Or is it all separate?
this is the page that's in the Dayton Communicator.
Okay.
No, he's got.
And is it
something
an
else.
attached
He's got the actual
page?
Mailer.
It's part of the communicator.
So it can fall out?
No, it
Oh,
can't.
okay, that's
So-
the question.
And then this is the mailer, front and back.
Okay.
Oh, this is our presentation from Zach.
Oh, okay.
Your question on the table right now is, do we want to move forward with this?
Correct,
And we'll need a motion on that?
yes.
Anybody want to
The
say?
the question that you'll have is going to certainly involve the next item for business.
The
You have
land.
you have a whole bunch of properties that you want to be looking at. My question will be which is more important? Because at some point, you're going to run out of funds.
So why would we mail this to every resident and not just mail it to
Businesses.
businesses? Seems like it'd be a lot cheaper.
Because there are some home-based businesses that might want to break out.
Well, there might be
I
people
thought they
that,
wouldn't qualify for it.
If they break out and want to go to a brick and mortar, then they have our attention. What if somebody wants to upgrade?
True.
And you could get somebody that wants to put in a little cafe and just feed the food shop inside the Raintree Plaza.
well, I
And maybe
mean,
this would get them over the hump, I guess, maybe.
yeah. I look at it as this, I mean, you look at eligible applicants, it's current and/or proposed businesses in these areas. So that's why you would send it to all the residents, because someone wants to open a coffee shop or whatever, then they would be an eligible applicant, right? We
Yeah,
might not
so-
approve them, but,
So a couple things I want to emphasize. One is the targeted areas are these purple areas that are shown on the map. So
Right.
it's, from a practical standpoint, I think it's more likely going to be along Balsam or in the village where you're going to have someone that wants to open up a business. And then the question is what properties are available. There's a handful.
yeah, you could have someone in the industrial area wanting to upgrade signage or something like
You
that,
could.
potentially.
So, the revolving loan program is between $5,000 and $50,000. The intention is that our loan is only going to provide half the funds that they need.
Let me ask you, why do we send out the date communicator?
To communicate with the public of what's going on in the city.
Okay?
So,
And being the newest member of the EDA, I have discussions with my neighbors, and I tell them, yeah, what are you doing, Dave? I said, well, I'm a new member of the EDA. What's that?
What's that?
What is that? What do you do there? I get up at 7 o'clock every third Tuesday of the month and go to a meeting. for what?
Well, that
You
was-
know, and to me, the communicator is a vehicle to communicate to the citizens of Dayton what their government is doing. We are a government committee, okay? And you know, we're working for them. So you know, the cost of $1,800, you know, I look at it as, well, why isn't it just part of the communicator? Why do we need to make the choice? Do you want to spend $1,800 on communicating to our citizens versus we got a lot of other stuff that we want? Well, you know, just from the background, we don't even have a budget.
We do.
We do have a budget.
Yeah. From a fund perspective, is it the 1,800 that you're
No,
concerned
no,
about?
no, no,
What's the-
I'm saying with this next discussion coming up, there's a couple of big things there, and I
Yeah.
think right now we have somewhere around 550 to 600,000 bucks in the kitty, and one of these is gonna take more than that.
Yeah. So the question, I think what you're raising is if we use that, then we weren't
Yeah.
going to have any money to do any
I'm
loans.
not opposed to spending the money and trying, and putting it out there, hey, there's a possible bridge loan here for
Well-
somebody that wants it. But you gotta be careful how much you spend first, I guess in my
If we get that one guy who knows the guy who knows the guy who robbed a guy from high school just once,
Well,
and he comes to our door with that mailer, no one reads the communicator.
well, if nobody
No, I
reads
think
it,
what-
then that's a big waste of money.
I
don't know
I
if
won't
I'd
go
say
that
that.
far. I
I
think
would-
that it needs to be all, right? I think it needs to be in the communicator. We did that community survey, and the communicator, the mailer, got really high marks from people, that people do look at it and read it. And so I think we're missing the boat if we don't have something in there.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
And what
And
does
doing
it,
something additional, nobody's taken this loan, and it's been available for how long? Years,
Nobody knows
right?
it's there, that's
And
why.
so people don't know. And so I think it's worth extra effort to try to get this thing in motion somehow. And, you know, 1,800 bucks is, in the scheme of things, isn't
Yeah.
a lot of money.
Yeah,
So-
to me, that's not the issue, the 1,800. I think we should do it. But maybe there's a bigger thing that we haven't talked about, which is if we put that out there and we get applicants, are we fine with taking the limited budget we have and providing it to those applicants? I mean, assume it's coming right out of our
Yep.
budget money, right? I think that's,
Yes.
between the lines, I think that's what maybe you're saying.
Yeah, to me, this discussion could have happened after the next one, so that we know which direction we're going there. Not that, I mean, realistically, nobody's asked for this for how many years? And that doesn't mean you're gonna get 8 people right now that are gonna suck up 400 grand. So, it may be trivial that I brought it up.
I like Dave's idea. We got a little extra effort.
Yeah,
You okay with that?
I'm fine.
It makes sense to me. You're always something to come in the mail. If it ain't dry cleaning or car detailing, you might as well see what your city's doing for you and what's available to you. So we need a motion to move forward on this?
I motion that we move forward.
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Okay.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay,
New business?
thank you. New business, so as I believe the EDA is aware of, Amanda Johnson, EDA's attorney, has switched firms. The EDA needs to either sign a new contract with Eckers and Lambert or keep the contract, the existing contract with Levander. The cost of the EDA is the same.
Motion to keep?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
If I could, the motion
The
is to
motion came
change the
from
contract.
Oh,
nobody.
motion to change it.
If I'm interpreting it
You got a
correctly.
first there, you need a second. is what you need.
He made the
I second the motion.
You didn't have a first, is what?
Yeah, we had first.
Okay.
Yeah.
We had first, third, and 15th before I can push my button on my pen. Okay, did that answer everything? Motion carries to move to the new
Yep. It was Sean, Dave, first and second, and motion carried 5-0.
Yes.
Okay.
7-0.
7-0.
I don't know. Everybody's here.
Cold today. All right, new business B, discussion. Zach, IAG, I'm sorry to keep you waiting this long with all this. Give us your kung fu.
Yeah. Well, good morning, everybody. For those of you I have not met, I'm Zach Synstegaard. I'm with IAG Commercial. I'm an advisor there. I work with Jeff LeFevre, who I know Tim and John have both met. And Jeff couldn't be here today. He expressed his apologies. He had another conflict with another client. But that's why we're a team. We can tackle it all together. So we'll get right into it here.
Thanks for coming today in this cold, nasty day.
Absolutely, yeah.
Both
happy
of
to be
you,
here.
thanks for coming.
Happy to be here. Today it's just a brief market update to you all, specifically regarding the south part of Dayton and the Triangle lot and that surrounding area there. And I know time might be of an essence here, so I'll try to speed things along here, and feel free to interrupt if you have any questions. But regarding the agenda here, if you want to go to the next slide, just an overview of the discussion today. It'll be kind of our role as a IAG Commercial, who we are, what we do, and then provide the market update that I addressed, kind of surrounding the Triangle lot there, and then how the market ties in with vision as far as that lot's concerned. And then kind of opening the door up for kind of a discussion with the group to see what thoughts are and if I could take any notes for any future plans moving forward. So next slide. So our role, IG Commercial is a niche real estate company that focuses on the end user of real estate. And we help our clients plan, buy, sell, lease, build, and invest commercial industrial real estate. Basically, we exist as a supplement to our clients, and if they don't regard their real estate as their core business. So you can think of us as consultants and an extension of your team to be your real estate department, essentially. And we basically exist to help our clients deliver a desired real estate strategy. So next slide. And then the strategy is delivered through our services, which I've already touched on, but it's strategic real estate planning, buyer tenant representation, and site selection, disposition or selling assets, and then we also provide construction project management as well. So, next slide. Okay, so getting into the market update itself. So for demographics, a lot of this is probably not news to you. You probably already are aware of it, but Dayton's one of the fastest growing communities in the Twin Cities metro. Even with challenges during the pandemic, job growth has exceeded losses since 2020, which is encouraging. And given the low unemployment rate and projection of a healthier economy with lower interest rates into 2025 and beyond, hopefully with the lower interest rates, healthy employment numbers are anticipated to continue. And then, going into the industrial side of things, as far as the statistics at the moment, and industrial and retail, which I'll get into next. But CoStar Analytics is the platform that we use for research for certain stats and things like this, and also our marketing. So that's what I'm citing here as far as the data. In a kind of an overall view of industrial, it's basically you're looking at the submarket vacancy rate of 4.9% at the moment, comparing to the larger Twin Cities market average, which is 4.2%. So basically the submarket is the northwest submarket, which includes Dayton, Osseo, Maple Grove, that sector there, and then the greater Twin Cities area is the larger part there. So basically, due to elevated rates, inflated labor and material costs, and a pullback in construction lending, construction starts definitely dropped over the last year in 2024 if you're looking at a snapshot of just that year. So that's important to note as well as we kind of discuss further about the industrial side. So next slide there. So going more into the construction, we really saw unprecedented construction all over the country in 2021 to 2023 when it comes to during the pandemic. And a lot of people, even our company, they would say, I'm sorry to hear that you're in commercial real estate. It's must be a difficult time during the pandemic. And that's really not true at all. Actually, IAG Commercial had their best year to date ever on record during the pandemic, and that was because of the industrial sector. So I think that's important to look at when you're looking at the last 5 years and then what's to come here, and it's definitely important to keep in mind. So recently, after the pandemic, we've seen a rise in build-to-suit manufacturing projects. Many companies specialize in industries and advanced manufacturing, high-tech warehousing, things like that are driving demand for custom-built spaces that are tailored towards their operational needs. So that's something to definitely keep in mind as well. Larger projects such as the cubes, which I'm sure you all are familiar with, that has struggled a little bit as of late. You probably are aware of that. But some of the smaller, I should say, sub 150,000 square feet projects are actually doing much better. And it's kind of that niche facility that seems to be what's in demand at the moment as far as the industrial sector. And then most recently, and I think the most important part of the whole presentation and the takeaway for today is if you look at the case study of the Opus project that has Turbine Pros as their first tenant. They had signed a lease for 87,000 square feet out of the total 132,000 square foot building. That's pretty much the prime example for the Triangle lot as far as what's in demand for the market at the moment. So if there's any takeaway for this whole presentation, that's it right there, that case study specifically. And niche manufacturing, custom build-to-suit facilities.
So spec, you basically have an Opus build a spec building to be filled by some tenant.
Correct. So if you're
That's
looking,
what's in demand.
correct.
Okay.
Yep. Currently, that's what's in demand, and that's what the market is telling us right now, especially in that part of Dayton. So, like I said, the larger facilities, like the cubes, for example, you have seen that struggle a little bit, but that's it's really just kind of a blank canvas. And it's if these companies that are coming in, there are close proximities to the Interstate 94 specifically, which is right next to the Triangle lot. Those types of locations are really driving demand for that specific niche. So it's kind of a location mixture with what's driving the economy, which is the smaller niche companies in the industrial asset class sector. So
Is it all for those small niche? Are they industrial mainly, or any office, or?
So I would say that pure office or general office, that it doesn't seem to be the driving factor in kind of what is in demand in that south part of Dayton. However, flex buildings, which is actually that Opus building that they constructed, I'm sure there's some office in there. It's a flex building. They have some office components, but largely it's more the manufacturing and distribution warehouse type of industrial. So if that answers your question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With your next 4 years in office as our new president, do you feel that that's going to be bumped?
Yes, I think that we're, like I mentioned back to 2024, where we did see some slowdown in construction starts, and interest rates were certainly a factor in that. We did see just a very slowdown in that sector, not just industrial, but nationwide on everything. So, but at the same time, as interest rates continue to improve, which seems to be what the market's heading towards as far as those rates, and also just a general improvement in the economy, I think that, yes, certainly it's going to be much better. So at least that's what the outlook would be telling us. So,
Sounds like a recipe.
yeah, exactly. So especially, I think things will start to stabilize in 2025, but as we get into 2026 and beyond, it's going to continue to improve. So it takes some time. It doesn't happen overnight, which I'm sure you're all aware of. So, but basically, to sum up this, what's in demand for this specific area in Dayton, sub 150,000 square foot niche industrial projects. So you can go to the next slide there. Okay, so, and I did want to touch on retail as well, just because I think it's important too, given the area. Won't spend too much time on it, but again, this is according to CoStar Analytics, our research platform. The vacancy rate is approximately 7.1%. This is mostly based on 2024 data since we had a complete year. And then there's little to no construction in the retail asset class sector at the moment in the Northwest Metro submarket. We are seeing also, as far as the market direction there, it's a little bit higher of a price point when compared to the larger Twin Cities market as a whole. So, and then just a note on there, I thought that was interesting to keep in mind when you're looking at square footage and size of facilities. But if you're considering land, soft costs, construction, you're looking at approximately 300 square feet per square feet as far as the construction costs.
For retail?
For retail, yes. This is just retail. Sorry, what was that?
Including the land?
That's including the land, yeah. So,
Not bad.
No, it's going to be, retail is obviously, for the most part, a little bit smaller than some of these industrial projects, when you're looking at larger, warehouses and facilities, but it is something to keep in mind. Again, that is an approximate number, but it's important to note.
What's the equivalent number in industrial?
I would have to get back to you on that. It's going to be probably a little bit more, especially when you look at more niche manufacturing facilities. And this is something I'll touch on a little bit later too, but when you compare distribution and manufacturing is going to be a little bit more expensive just because there's more operational needs and specific requirements for those buildings. Versus distribution, where it's largely warehouse, it doesn't really change that much from user to user, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's that's just something to keep in mind. But we can get a little bit further details down the road when it comes to some costs. So.
Yeah, I had a question. On the first point, overall, current market vacancy rate was at 7.1. In the earlier slide, was 4.7?
That's the difference. This is specifically retail versus.
This is,
yeah.
okay, I'm sorry. I
The
saw that.
4.7 was
Yep.
for industrial.
Yeah, it was 4.9 for the submarket and then 4.2 for the Twin Cities broader market. So, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I see the retail.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
and then just tells you that there's more.
Yeah, again, this slide is just purely retail there, so. Yeah, next slide if there wasn't any more questions on that. So, next thing that's important to consider here is tying in the market, which we just talked about, to a vision, which is the most important part about marketing a piece of land or property. So, really the vision has to match demand if there were to be any sort of success with either that's selling, buying, it doesn't matter, it needs to match demand. So basically what we indicated before, the sub 150,000 square feet industrial, manufacturing, build-to-suit, those types of projects are going to be what demand is indicating for that specific area. And really not only just that specific area in Dayton, but also the broader submarket in the Twin Cities here too. However, all of that being said, flexibility is key here, and that's very important. So the market may be indicating that it's a sub 150,000 square foot user or project to go into that site, but it is important to remain flexible and not be married too much to a specific user, like Turbine Pros, for example. And the reason for that is because there are some other viable options. Retail is viable, however, that might be a little bit limited to gas stations or service stations. But also things that are up and coming and on the rise is some recreational types of retail that has a hybrid component. So, for example, Whirly Ball, if you've heard of that, it's basically, I don't know if anyone knows what that is, but you're in pretty much a bumper car and you're playing like a game with like a racket, pretty much, and you drive around these little tracks. I mean, those types of companies. It sounds kind of ridiculous, but those types of companies are actually taking off. You're seeing a large increase in those too. So
Let's do it in a real car.
yeah, that too. You can do that.
Have
Demolition
a real
derby
place.
type. Yeah. But it's just important to keep those things in mind as well and not get too married to something, because you might see a user like Whirly Ball, which is a national brand, come in and say like, all right, let's go. We like this site. We've done our research already. And to be married to something else, you just want to leave the door open is basically what I'm saying, and remain flexible. So. And same with golf simulators. Another example of that in South Bloomington, there's a office golf company, if anyone's heard of that. They've actually kind of during the pandemic, when office was struggling so much, they take vacant office buildings and convert it into golf simulators, essentially. So they have every floor, there's an 18-hole golf course in this office building. They have a bar inside. So they've kind of had this model of taking advantage of distressed office properties and turning it into something like golf simulators, which is interesting. So it's just those types of quasi-industrial and retail hybrids that are interesting and things to keep in mind moving forward. So, yeah, next slide if there's not any more questions on that. So at this point, I kind of wanted to open the door to discussion a little bit, kind of hear what you all are thinking as far as the target buyer, keeping in mind some of the information I provided as well. And I already touched on the manufacturing and distribution side of it, kind of the differences of the two, where distribution's a little bit more, friendly as far as alterations to the property from user to user, while manufacturing is a little bit more niche, and it could be costly if there was to be a change in hands. But other, options for the site too, while staying in the industrial sector, is multi-tenant buildings, which there's some case studies around there that are both good and bad. For example, the Opus building is technically a multi-tenant building. It can be at least. However, there's some other locations closer to Rogers where, there's been, it's been in the market for a while. So there's some interesting interplay there, but also location is key. And given the proximity to 94, I think that you're probably going to see a little bit increase in demand as far as that type of building. And then also just your general thoughts on office, retail, and then hybrid of things that we talked about before, while keeping in mind the tax base for any sort of company to come in. So I guess, with that, it'd be interesting to hear what you all think and kind of what.
Just on the tax base, I mean, what are when you think about the tax base, I mean, what's the best versus the worst in terms of, because you get property tax, but then you also have more employees, you would have more, I mean, I guess at least city. Well, do we tax at all in the, I'm just trying to figure out what, because other than property tax, what are your,
Well, you have school and county tax, and then there's special taxing authorities. So like the EDA would be a special taxing authority.
Yeah.
Metro Mosquito Control is another example.
I'm just thinking, because we talked about, if you have a building that employs a lot more people, so to speak, hopefully some of those people live in Dayton, which then increases your tax base. So I'm just trying to think it out of a tax base perspective. It seems to me the road we've been on, which are these massive warehouses, are probably the lowest tax base, but maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, to give you an example, so if we had a data center, I mean, those are a data center. They're very expensive properties. They produce a lot of property taxes, very few employees.
Yeah.
You can have like a school headquarters. It doesn't produce any taxes, but has a lot of employees that go out and buy lunch. So those are two extremes. And so, Jack, I think what you're talking about is like a distribution center that has a large building that produces taxes, but very few employees that are going to go out and buy gas or buy lunch,
right,
versus a manufacturing operation that is going to do both.
Right. And that's when we talk about what, because there's the easy route, which is you just match your vision to the highest demand, which is what you've told us is basically manufacturing and industrial, sub 150. Or there's, and that may be great, but are there other options that may take longer but would
Multi-level
serve the city better long term?
Yeah, I had a question
Yeah.
regarding the retail. Is there any metrics that is out there that defines demand for retail versus population or residential units?
Sure. So I guess a way to answer that question, you take a gas station, for example, name one, a Quick Trip, Casey's. What they're constantly looking for, they have real estate departments within their team for acquisitions, and they're looking for sites that match their demographics, their vehicles per day on the streets, and proximity to major highways, things like that. So honestly, if you're looking at the retail component, while that whole sector is limited, gas station is probably going to be one you're going to get a lot of attention with if you listed that property right away. I think that's why it's important to keep an open mind. While the market might be telling you what the best fit for that land is, which is the sub 150,000 square feet, there's going to be a lot of national companies and service stations and other types of businesses that are going to be reaching out first before those types of industrial users because of that.
So as an EDA body here, and I understand, Quick Trip has a whole marketing department searching for sites that match, and I assume they come and get the demographics from this city and then go from there. But from the EDA standpoint, is there anything that we should be doing, to accommodate that? Other than setting land aside or pushing for zoning?
Right.
Shovel ready.
Not necessarily shovel-ready, but, forward planning.
That's a good question. If you're looking at marketing the property, for example, so say you acquire it and are able to market it and everything, it's how you market it. That's the biggest thing, and that's where we come in. it's not just, we're not just realtors that set it and forget it. I mean, we're actively marketing, we're making calls to our network, and trying to bring certain businesses that match what you're looking for to meet your intent at the same time, getting creative with the marketing to bring in those types of businesses. So
at this point, do you feel like you know what you don't have like what our vision is yet? You
Right.
need that though.
Right, and that's kind of why I wanted to open the last part up for
Okay.
discussion, just to get some notes, while also presenting some information of what the market is telling us at the moment. So, we can, it's always good to start early so we can start thinking about those things. I've got a pretty good idea, but at the same time, nothing's defined yet, so if that makes sense.
And that's based on current conditions, what you feel is the hot spot or the sweet spot for development on that spot is
Yes.
current conditions. Because the one thing I wonder about, I mean, I don't know much about retail, but my understanding is retail follows rooftops, right? And you understand why Quick Trip wanted to be next to the highway because there's their rooftops, if you will,
Right.
are driving by. We're, I'd say, close to finalizing a large apartment development on the other side of the highway. So you add 600 housing units to that mix right now. Does that change your thoughts around what this property could or should be?
The market is, it's obviously on a rolling basis, so it does change, but what we talked about today as far as what the market's indicating is not going to change anytime soon. I think that's kind of the direction we're in, the situation that part of Dayton is in, and that's what it's telling us, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon as far as the industrial, if that's what you're getting at. However, when you look at a service station or a gas station, regardless of what's around there, it's a good fit for that site. If you're looking at it from Quick Trips or like any gas station's perspective, because they don't need to be in a fancy downtown environment. They just need to be in proximity to the highway. Are people going to be able to, easily access our gas station off the highway and from other parts of Dayton, which, if you're looking at the housing example, people go right down the road for anything, to get a jug of milk or something like that. That's just a small example, but, but to have that retailer service center, gas station type of user or industrial, I think both are, fit pretty well in that, to be honest. So, even though the market tells us one thing over the other, specifically, so.
But David, I think that while that won't have any effect on what the market's indicating, it does maybe have some effect on what we think as a city should be there, in terms of what we want to see. Because to me, it's kind of like the easy route, like this is what's really in demand, so just do that.
Right.
Or, what do we really want this to be, which may be a little harder.
Absolutely.
But it may take some more time.
I think we need to
that's the way you
drive
market
this.
Yes.
Ultimately, what do we want there?
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be something that's not going to succeed, so we shouldn't be, that naive about it. But at the same time, I don't think, our answer should be, what's the quickest flip on this thing?
Mm-hmm.
I know with the Quick Trip site, the developer was saying there was trouble with the location. Some of it might have been topography, but the other interested parties weren't, the Medtronics that we at one time kind of thought would be the way to go. It was an asphalt company and something else that, didn't have a lot of appeal to us.
Right.
So I think we need to define that, but it needs to be, based on some intelligence, that we're not asking for something that'll never happen.
Right.
Well, and a note on that too, that part of the reason why we exist is to help navigate through that. Because honestly, anybody that's not in real estate could eventually come to a conclusion of what is in demand for a certain site. The tricky part and why we exist as a brokerage is help navigate that and maximize the dollar amounts for our clients and having the best user that fits your intent at the same time. Because it's easy to just be like, that's what the market says, let's just go with that. That's the easy button. Anybody can do that. That's where we come in and help navigate and meet the intent of what you're looking for while maximizing dollars. So, yep.
My other question is around timing. We've, I think, put some effort into figuring out, what can we do with that property and how does that happen? And Amanda has helped us, figure out with the county, what that might look like. what I have some concern about is if that we are in a rush to buy that property so that we can market it and sell it. Seems out of sync to me with how other development happens. And I'll point at this apartment complex again. You know, that's been in various stages of discussion for a couple of years now, right? And, you know, getting close to the finish line. But that developer does not own that property at this point. There's no sale unless he gets his approvals to build.
Right.
And, you know, I wonder why we can't do, you know, the same kind of thing. I think that's common in industry to go that route. And why we can't, I mean, the property's not going anywhere until we do something with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're not at risk of losing it to somebody. But why can't we, you know, first of all, figure out what we want there and then, you know, work to market this thing and, you know, at a point where we've got a pretty solid direction from somebody, then we go ahead and make the purchase and then, you know, relatively quickly then sell it to this preferred developer to get the outcome that we want.
And that's certainly an option. I mean, it's all about the tactics of how you market it, and if that's the direction, that's
But
the
we also have
direction.
market price to watch.
Yeah.
If the land keeps pushing up, we could save ourselves, what?
Is-
Who knows, 200,000-300,000 just by buying it now versus buying it later.
And there's a cost to owning it
Yeah.
There's a cost on it.
because we're going to put that money out and it's going to sit there producing nothing until we, you know, close the deal.
So my question is do we have essentially full control of the property in terms of purchasing it? Because of, like, whether we purchase it today or whether we purchase it 3 years from now when we've got or 2 years, whatever the time frame is, when we've got a buyer that wants to put something specific, we know exactly what's going on. Do we still have, I mean, no one can come in and buy that property out from under us, right?
That's an amendment question.
Yeah, that's good.
So right now, we own the property on a restricted use deed, so it can
Right.
only be used for the transit hub and some ancillary related things. Based on the conversations with the county has agreed that we can basically enter into negotiations with the county to purchase the property outright. In statute, it does require that we need to identify a public purpose for the property. So one of the things that I think is going to be important is, while there might be future development opportunities on the site, that is not going to be a helpful component to a conversation with the county right now. The conversation with the county right now would be focused on a variety of public uses, purposes that the city might want to use this property for as part of the negotiations with the county. Does that make sense?
So then once we purchase it, then we don't have to do the public purpose anymore, basically?
So once we purchase it under the
My mind
statute,
changed.
once we purchase it under the statute, there is no restriction on the deed. And then
Okay.
ultimately, whatever we determine
that's
is
the driver.
the final use is up to the city solely, versus right now, we're restricted to what the county says we get to do with the property. Does that,
Okay.
everybody?
That clarifies things a lot.
Yeah, and all of this was in the context of that, exactly, that after that acquisition would happen, then, you know, what does the saleability look like in the listing process? So,
Right.
yeah.
From your standpoint, you know, assume we're talking about the triangle mostly. And does the IAG provide services? So we know how big this piece of land is. What can go in there? You know, we always talk about, we'd like to see medical, manufacturing, so forth and so on. You know, based on that, how big a building can go in there? How many employees?
Or maybe multiple buildings.
How
We roll B
many?
into C, so let's move forward on C with that question.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and that's all things that can be addressed down the road for sure. But going into this slide, it's really just more considerations to keep in mind moving forward after the process with the county is complete. But going with that, you know, just general points. If the EDA were acquired the property, you control who develops it. city would have some control over zoning, but not specifically who the end user would be. So, and then things to consider too, speed to market. City water and sewer, that's going to be major points for some of these buyers that come through, and they're going to want to know, well, is it connected to city water and sewer? That's going to be important to most people and most people that will come over for the site. And then shovel-ready, things like that. Obviously, we don't have much information, or at least I don't at this time in regards to that. But at the same time, that's kind of the next step down the road of getting a little bit more niche focused and zeroed in on the property itself and what we need to know to proceed. So. But general thoughts on that, I just wanted to throw that up there as well, just for general considerations, so.
Who owns the triangle piece that's not covered by the blue line there?
There's two parcels here, so this is all together.
So
It's
it's part of it.
Yeah.
So is the 1.56 acres include the little area across the road and the road where that's the monument, right?
This is the monument sign.
Right.
So essentially, it's about 6.5 acres that's buildable. Once you exclude the
6.5,
stormwater
okay.
About 225,000 square foot building.
So what, I guess the question, what could fit here? It'd be similar to the Opus building that's across the street.
Or it could be multiple that's the other question. Could you subdivide this into multiple lots for multiple buildings, because.
Business park?
I don't know, a business, whatever. There's all kinds of things you could think of, but, I'm reluctant to say we should go find a 250,000 square foot building, and
how about we
slam
go
it
up?
in there just the same as the Opus building across the road. I don't know, that's the question, coming back to vision and what, that kind of, that kind of discussion.
So the
we
thing,
have to
think about,
have.
whatever gets built there is going to be there for 100 years. So what do you want to look at when you're driving down Dayton Parkway?
Well, to me, you're coming in Dayton Parkway, we put all these nice trees to make looking entrance, and then we've got these massive warehouse buildings is all we see. And so if that's the entrance to the city, I think it seems like we should be thinking more deeply about what we really want there.
And the purpose of all of this presentation is for that exact reason, to start generating thoughts and ideas of what your vision would look like down the road. So, presenting data that, what suggests what the market is telling us at the moment. So, but that's a great point. That's certainly a possibility to subdivide, so.
And we can build up too, not just out.
Yeah.
Let's put some levels in there, and maybe part of that's parking lot to service the 400-story building.
Well, and that was part of my question is obviously building, but then you have to take into account parking, how many parking spaces. And then it's expensive to go up in parking.
I deliberately pulled the vision off of this one so that we could have this discussion first. And now we can go back and talk about what do we want to see, right? That was our function, because I knew we had only an hour.
So I have a question. I have a question for you, but not necessarily for you to answer.
Which you,
Zach, is looking at this as the EDA purchasing this. I'm curious, and maybe you could answer this question in an email and send it to President Huntner. Is what is the estimated market value of this piece of property right now, and us to analyze that versus purchase price, investment costs, commissions when we go to resell it. We need to make sure that this is a good fit. And starting with that end number of what is this potentially worth, we can work the numbers backwards.
Right.
So is that something that you could maybe email
right?
President and then he can share with us?
Down the road, absolutely. That would be the next logical step. Really, for this, it was just at the kind of big picture, large snapshot of the market itself. But certainly, that's definitely a part of the analysis that we would go into the next steps.
Okay.
So,
I think it would be
Yeah.
interesting as part of that analysis to look at if you sold all 6 acres to one buyer versus subdividing, what could you get for it, type of thing, to see what brings the most.
right.
I have just a quick question. When you talked about the northwest area, is Brooklyn Park included in that or no?
That's really more central towards Minneapolis.
Central north.
It's close, but really we're looking at the 94 corridor when it comes to,
Sure.
Rogers, Dayton,
Dayton,
that
Maple
part
Grove.
of the southwest, or northwest, I should say, a submarket, so.
We need a motion on this one here?
I don't know what you're holding.
We already seconded a motion, Amanda. We have already got the,
Yep, you've already done that. On value, so I just want to mention, in comparing what Opus paid across the street and as well as Quick Trip, the value's between $230,000 and $250,000 an acre. So this comes out to, $2 million plus.
Yeah.
Other than that, that's.
I mean, to me, I think what we ought to think about is like, what analysis we would like Zach to come back with. It seems like we need that plus the information that Sean was asking for, and then we need a session to talk about vision and give these guys some direction if we're going to purchase this. I mean, that's a decision in and of itself, but it seems like, I don't know that this is a motion, but maybe it's an agenda item for the next meeting or whatever.
We can, I'll just add, for several meetings, we've discussed this, and so the EDA needs to have a common vision of what you want to see along Dayton Parkway.
Can we put that on the next agenda?
took it off this so we could have this conversation first.
Yeah.
Make that happen for the next one.
Okay.
Did I get everything handled with these motions?
Those are all three different items that don't have anything to do with this.
Okay. Well, we're all signed, so. Have we covered C in that to our best ability? Because we're running out of time here.
No.
No.
Okay. Let's talk C.
Okay. Wait, I'll turn it over to Amanda.
So, in your packet, there was a sort of a quick memo from me regarding the history in terms of what has happened with the sites and then the next steps for the property. So really what I'm looking for from the EDA is direction on, I would propose that the next step be a joint work session with the EDA and the city council, because keep in mind, the city currently owns this property. The city is the only one who can get it free and clear. They can ultimately transfer it to the EDA, but the city must be the buyer of the property. So there should be some sort of a work session with the two bodies to determine, A, do we want to move forward? B, what are we willing to spend on this property? And then also potentially creating a committee that would not be a quorum of either body. So less than 3 members of the EDA, less than 4 members of the EDA. You have a 5-member council, right? So then two council members that would have the ability to communicate, negotiate with the county and myself, so that we could enter into those conversations with the county. Ultimately, final decision would come back to the city council, but for functionality purposes, it's always better to have a committee of less than a quorum, so that way we don't have open meeting law violations, but we're able to sort of get that intermediary work done. Ultimately, again, final decisions are made by the city council. But the first step on that would be a joint work session between the EDA and the council to make sure that everybody's on the same page, that this is a piece of property that you want to acquire.
And we're talking about the Lent property?
No, we're talking about the triangle.
The triangle, okay.
You already own the Lent property.
Oh, okay, that's done? Okay.
Yep, you own that. That's yours. We'll talk about that in a second.
So you need from what from this body right now to
Well,
say
just
that?
confirmation that that is what you would like to do next, is to set up that joint work session.
Yeah.
Scott?
Now, here's
He's just saying, get some direction.
one other thing. I would recommend that this joint work session have a closed session component where we talk about possible negotiation / purchase of this property. There are things that are definitely better to have in a closed work session, because we are talking about negotiating the purchase of a property, right? I understand that we're talking with a county versus a private property owner, but this should still be under a closed session. I can work with John to make sure that that's done correctly. And then the other thing to note, that at least under the statute, it does authorize, the statute language says that the county board determines the present market value. So ultimately, the county board will be determining what price they are willing to accept or not accept for the property. So I just want to make sure that everybody has that expectation in mind. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we do need to identify something called a public purpose that is different than a public use. A public use is going to be a fire station, a public works building. A public purpose is broader, and it can encompass redevelopment. It can encompass removing blight. It can encompass multiple things, but we will need to articulate for the county our public purpose in purchasing the property. So those are just some things to think about. I will absolutely walk through both of the EDA and the council through all of that at this presumed upcoming closed work session, provided that that's the next step that the EDA would like to take.
I think so.
Yeah. So we need a motion on that?
You okay with that, Dave?
I think so. Yeah, I do. I am okay with that. I think that, we sort of need to work backward a little bit on this. What do we want this thing to end up to be? And that, because of the way that the property is owned and has to be reacquired, I guess, it needs to be a shared vision with the council and the EDA. So I think that's the logical next step
Okay.
for it. And then understanding better kind of this public purpose thing might, restrict a little bit or help it guide us to, what our vision can be. And then we pick the path on how to move forward, but I think we got to have that first, so the joint session makes total sense
Scott?
to me. Also, we
Oh,
have two
sorry.
brand-new council members, and so we, as a council, can't necessarily say, Scott and I here, but, we aren't the voice of everybody, and I
Right.
don't think we know what the voice of everybody is at this point.
So do we need a motion?
Yeah, we will. I want to make sure you're okay with this before we push it.
Everything he said.
Everything you said, times two. Okay. Go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we should have a joint session with council to discuss this.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Any more in that C, Amanda, we got to worry about here, or
No, I'm good. Thank you.
John? We're all good with all these? So we got the 140 PID ended in 14. That's handled?
Yeah, so we've only really talked about the triangle piece. There's another tax forfeiture part in the village, but this is all encompassing.
Okay. And then Robinson Street, that's the one in the village?
Yes.
.28.
Yep.
All right, update staff. Let's move forward to board and updates.
Hayden, do you want to do the residential?
Before we leave to that, I'd like to get, for how long as we got everybody here,
Yeah.
a good photo,
Sure.
so that when this goes out, we'll be able to say, this is your group working for you. Maybe we can have Zach take a picture of us working for them.
Yep.
But can I ask just quickly, the 1.56 and the 9.08, what is that? Is that the triangle, or is that?
It's a triangle.
Okay, that's what I thought, but then he said
I'm sorry,
6 acre.
which-
The
the first
1.56, the PID ending in 009, and,
Yes, so the first two PIDs mentioned is the triangle property on Dayton Parkway, then the third is on Robinson Street.
then the third is the one that you showed there.
Right.
Is that actually Robinson Street?
Yes.
No.
So that's
No, no, no.
residential.
Old Town.
Yes.
No, I know, but I'm looking at the photo here, and Robinson Street comes down and turns to the left, and that one's 2 blocks off of Robinson Street.
Triangle
So
right there.
Robinson, when it turns to the left, or when
Also
it turns
goes to the
south,
right?
becomes a different street.
Okay,
That's been there a while.
so that's a new tax forfeiture.
Not new.
And it's
It's,
been
I
there a while.
don't know what year it is, but it's
Okay. But then the city also owns several other lots on Robinson there as well.
Now we do with the Lent property.
Yeah, but there were,
There's another one that we own near, close to the post office.
yeah, and then there's another one that's right on the corner, I think.
Where the roundabout might be.
Where-
Rockton.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should probably get another, just like a update to everybody on what was he all have down there. The city has, so we can kind of, because now that we bought the Lent property, what else do we have? Just thinking about it in big picture.
Okay, vacant lot inventory, Lent property acquisition, go ahead.
Mr. President, members of the EDA, I'll be brief on this, but this was a slide I put together for the Planning Commission for their January meeting, just a recap of the 2024 single-family home permits and kind of what is the status of what is still available, what's yet to come for 2025 and beyond. Be happy to answer any questions on this.
Could this slide be sent out to us?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so one thing to note in the detail to kind of the takeaway is we have about a 3-year supply of residential lots. If everything that's been approved and that's under review currently, we have about a 3-year supply.
That's based on
Based on that,
2024.
right?
Yep,
Yep.
based on 2024 permits being issued, and that would be consistent with a 3-year.
Does that feel like we got a lot of inventory, or does it feel like we're tight? I mean, or just about right? That's the question.
I see our Zach shrugging over there. Why are we shrugging?
I don't know, Mike. It's tough. It's a tough answer. I don't think there's the right answer or wrong.
Sure, do the tough one. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, okay.
I'll be here all day.
Let's go.
All right, do we have 25 legislation bonding requests?
Yes. We have 5 bonding requests. So we have $2 million for the Northwest Water Tower, $5 million for the Northwest Wellhead Treatment Facility, $3 million for Dayton River Road and Pineview Roundabout, $1.25 million for the fire training facility, and then $400,000 for EDA land acquisition. So a total of $11,650,000 that we're asking from the legislature.
Okay. Open meeting laws?
Yep. So just as a reminder, since this is January, it's the first of the year, for open meeting laws, you have a quorum that's any more than 2. It's more than this, for
It'd be more than 3.
more than 3. So just a reminder for when you're communicating with other EDA members, if you're talking to more than 3 in one location or in one mode, it is a violation of the open meeting law.
Does that include, like Zach was teaching us, that when we do a BCC and they cannot respond back to us, that's a legible purpose?
No. So the way that the open meeting law works is staff is always able to send communication to everybody. That's not a violation. But between members, you cannot communicate with each other unless you are communicating with less than a quorum, so with less than 4 people. And keep in mind, there's something called the serial meeting law violation, which is where one of you would email to the other one, who would forward it on to the third, who would forward it on to the fourth. We have a violation. So if you want communication to go out to the entire group, it is always best to send it to staff and have staff disseminate that information versus anything where you're sending it from your email. It's just the safest way to prevent a violation.
Well, that's quite a bit different than what we were taught. We were taught a blind BCC, Zach.
I'll clarify what I meant by BCC. I meant that staff can BCC everybody, and I apologize if that was the mistaken, because that was the idea, is that staff can then send out all information, similar to what Ms. Johnson has said, that staff can BCC everybody, and then everybody has the same information. And the reason why we BCC is so that you cannot reply all. We can send it out to everybody, as in like a two actually in the line. The risk we run with that with staff members is that you could then reply, instead of replying just to me, you could reply all on accident, and now we have an open meeting law violation. Now, I believe, and I'm going to have to clarify and ask the question, but I believe it's a personal liability, not a professional liability, as in it's not the city that's liable, it's the person who's communicating that's liable for that open meeting law violation.
So just in a practical
Yes.
sense, so if staff sends us an email, we should only reply to staff,
Yes.
not to everybody.
Yes, and it's a great call. to do the BCC. They're basically just setting you up for success, right? So they're going to email you. You're not going to be able to see all of the other EDA members, so you don't have to worry about accidentally replying all. You can reply safely because that's not a risk. I do the exact same thing.
Unless you
the
did it
smart
by
mode.
accident or whatever.
You can't, because you can't see who they've copied. You can't see
Yeah.
the BCC line.
So you can't reply to all.
So you can't reply to all.
Okay.
It's just a fail-safe.
Then the second thing is that as an EDA member, you should never send an email to more than 3 EDA members
Ever, period.
ever.
Yeah.
Basically.
Full stop.
Really, it'd be
And keep in
two,
mind,
because you count also.
Yeah.
yeah, you can't get around it by, you send it, I'm going to send it to you two, and then you go ahead and forward it to 2 more, and then you can't. That's that serial violation. So, and this is a personal violation, which means that you are personally liable. It is not something that is the city's sort of violation. It's you personally. How this would be found out is if somebody did a Data Practices Act request and asked for all of the emails and then pieced it together that there was these emails that were sent improperly. That's generally, the other large violation of open meeting law is, I don't know if you're on Facebook, but if you're on Facebook and you're talking about city business, EDA business, you need to have a completely public profile. You can't block people from your page. If you do, then that's considered a violation because you're not doing it out in the open. And again, you would never want to communicate with each other on that, on a Facebook or some other social media, but I think Facebook is probably the most common.
Questions?
All right, board updates? B.
Yep, that's you from the board members.
Yeah.
Whatever you got. What do you got for an update?
What do I have for an update?
Yeah.
I mean, it's cold out. That's all I got for an update. I don't really have nothing. So, I mean, I didn't understand the BCC thing because I was trained in a different mode. We will now correct that. Go ahead.
And that's why I wanted to make sure it got brought up, just because make sure that we're all on the same page with
Yep.
things and information being shared properly and improperly. And it's essentially, since I mentioned earlier, and I remember mentioning it, I think it was about a year ago, when I said we should BCC everybody, just to save everybody from the reply all thing. And again, that was incorrect information that I gave, so that's what I make sure that everyone's on the
No
same
worries, I
page,
just-
which is why we're talking about it today.
I was following direction, and
Yep,
then all of a
yep,
sudden, here
that's
we
why.
are, it's the wrong direction.
Yep.
Staff
Correct.
can BCC everybody.
Yeah, we cannot. Okay, put a pin in this. Are we done? Adjourn? Motion 2?
I would just like to add, Zach, thank you for coming
Yes.
this morning. Very interesting, and it's one of the things that I'm personally interested is overall market and how it applies to what the EDA is doing. So I appreciate you taking the time.
Will you guys come up for a photo? Motion to adjourn?
Yeah, one more thing, just for the February meeting, we're going to discuss the vision for Dayton Parkway. We'll review a ownership map for the Old Village, and then we'll have a preliminary plant review for DCM Farms, which is proposing a gas station, 10,000 square feet retail.
Well, that's the one by Dean's there
Yeah,
again.
That's what's on it currently.
No, this is proposed
Oh, no, I mean, our agenda for next time.
for February.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will have some additions.
Okay.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries, adjourned.